The larger a movie's scale and budget are, generally the more characters it will bring into the fold, often resulting in a crowded, even overstuffed ensemble that the script must attempt to accommodate. Balancing the interests of potentially dozens of characters isn't easy, though films like Avengers Infinity War and Endgame have proven how nimble writing can do justice to a massive roster. Yet those films are perhaps outliers, and there are far more examples of films that sadly just didn't deliver the goods where at least one character was concerned. All of these films certainly had a lot to juggle, but that doesn't entirely excuse the disappointing treatment of these potential-filled characters. So with all that in mind, I'm Gareth, you are watching What Culture, and here are 8 movie characters who totally deserved better. Number 8, Taskmaster, Black Widow. By far, one of the most appealing aspects of Black Widow's marketing was the presence of iconic comic book baddie Taskmaster. Due to the film's numerous delays, fans were left speculating for literally years on the villain's identity, with most believing Taskmaster would eventually be revealed to be Melina Vostokov, Rick Mason, or more outlandishly, a clone of Natasha Romanoff. Sadly, the outcome was decidedly less interesting than any of those. Taskmaster is revealed late in the movie to be Antonia, the tortured, traumatized daughter of the film's primary villain, Dreykov. The reveal wasn't inherently bad, but very little was actually done with it. Taskmaster was relegated to being a B-tier supporting villain when she absolutely could have been the primary antagonist on her own. All in all, she was basically a mind-controlled zombie who predictably gets redeemed at the end. The action sequences also didn't do nearly enough with Taskmaster's ability to mimic her combatants' fighting styles, ensuring a fan-favorite character was translated to the big screen with a mere shoulder shrug. Hopefully Thunderbolts does something a little bit more interesting with her, yeah, hopefully. We pray. Number 7, Liu Kang, Mortal Kombat. Though the Mortal Kombat reboot wasn't a great movie, it at least captured enough of the IP's grisly essence to deliver a moderately entertaining video game adaptation. Its big, gaping flaw, however, was in centering the story around an original character, Cole Young, who effectively serves as a totally pointless audience surrogate, complete with a wife and daughter not a single Mortal Kombat fan cared about. Now, Louis Tan tried to bring life to Cole, but the fundamental issue is that Cole effectively took the place that should have been naturally afforded to Mortal Kombat's de facto protagonist, Liu Kang. Though Ludi Lin was well cast as Kang, the character takes far too much of a back seat throughout the film, relegated to a supporting role when he should have been kicking ass up front. Compare this Liu Kang to the one from the first 2 Mortal Kombat movies, and it's just no contest. He was the inarguable protagonist of those films, while played with impressive intensity by the great Robin Shou. Yes, we got some cool moments with Kang here, but not nearly enough to satisfy fans of the series, which is what this film should have really been striving to do in every single fiber of its being, right? Now, what movie do you think had the wrong main character or protagonist? Let me know in the comments right down below. Number 6, Captain Boomerang, The Suicide Squad. On one hand, you have to respect James Gunn for delivering such a shocking opening to The Suicide Squad, in which many of the advertised heroes were swiftly wiped out in cartoonishly violent fashion. If you assume the deaths would only involve bit part characters though, Gunn delivered a genuine gut punch by having Captain Boomerang be ripped to shreds by the rotor blades of a crashing helicopter. As shock value, it absolutely works, but considering that Boomerang was one of the brighter spots of David Ayer's wonky original Suicide Squad, and it remains one of Jai Courtney's few genuinely good roles, it's a damn shame he had mere minutes of screen time here before, being helicoptered. At least Rick Flag made it close to the end of the film before being killed off, allowing him to complete a distinct character arc, whereas Boomerang was more or less a lamb for the slaughter. Number 5, Man on the Island, A Quiet Place Part 2. As much as you might think that any character credited merely as Man man on the island can't be that interesting or important, considering that the great Oscar-nominated actor Jimon Hounsou was cast in the part. It was reasonable to expect a character of real grit and substance, and for a few scenes, it truly seems like Hounsou's unnamed man is gonna serve as a major fixture for the rest of the movie, and perhaps even survive for the inevitable sequel. In A Quiet Place Part 2, Hounsou plays the leader of a small island colony of survivors who are cut off from the monsters and are able to live in relative peace. At least until Emmett and Regan inadvertently allow one of the monsters to drift to the island using a boat. Awkward. The monster then rampages throughout the island, leading to the man on the island's death during the attempted escape. It's an incredibly surprising moment that a character played by a name actor bites the dust so fast. But easy shock value aside, it felt like Hounsou was capable of bringing so much more to this world before being, killed off. Thankfully, 2024 prequel A Quiet Place Day 1 expanded upon Henry's character. Yes, he's called Henry, not Man on the Island, and ended up being arguably the best film in the series to date. So at least it all worked out in the end. If you like this video you're watching right now about characters who deserved better, well, great news! If you hit that subscribe button right down below, you'll get even more of these What Culture videos each and every day. Number 4, Death Dealer, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings certainly did a laudable job of introducing audiences to a host of new characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, though the ball was once again dropped where an appealing supporting villain was concerned. In this case, we're talking about Death Dealer, a distinctive masked assassin working for the villainous Wen-Wu, and a relatively minor but memorable antagonist from the comics. Death Dealer's frankly fantastic design in the film and his terrific early fight against Shang-Chi suggested he would play a major role in the later stages of the film, but his part really ends up amounting to no more than an upmarket lackey. Death Dealer appears and disappears in and out of the movie as the story requires, but the character has practically no depth or shade whatsoever, serving more as a cool-looking, temporary physical obstacle to our hero. Unsurprisingly, the character has received many comparisons to Star Wars Boba Fett. Similarly, he's much more badass than his scant screen time and extremely unsatisfying death would suggest. I will never get over that Sarlacc moment. Yes, I know he came back, but still. Right, back to Death Dealer. He deserves so much better than being swiftly snuffed out like a rent-a-goon by one of the Dweller in Darkness grotesque minions. Number 3, Daniel Robitaille, aka Candyman. Candyman. When Tony Todd was announced to be part of the most recent Candyman sequel, fans were extremely excited that the original screen iteration of the horror icon, whose given name is Daniel Robitaille, would be integrated into the story. Most fans reasonably assumed that Todd would appear as the physical embodiment of Candyman, and while a 66-year-old Todd presumably wouldn't be carrying out much of the action himself, any shots showing Candyman's face or using his voice would surely make use of him, right? Sadly, this turned out not to be the case at all. The bulk of the film focuses instead on other iterations of Candyman, namely Sherman Fields, a man beaten to death by police decades earlier, and protagonist Anthony McCoy's progressive transformation into another version of Candyman. In fact, Todd only appears in the final moments of the film. After Anthony's version of Candyman slaughters the police, he transforms into Daniel Robitaille and implores Anthony's girlfriend, Brianna, to tell everyone. It's a powerful moment for sure, but given that it was heavily implied Todd would have a substantial part in the film rather than a superficial, nostalgia-baiting cameo, fans of the franchise understandably felt quite short-changed by it, and it ultimately turned out to be Todd's last big screen appearance as the character too, with the terrific actor sadly passing away last year. Number 2, Martian Manhunter, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League was a mostly satisfying redemption story for Snyder's shelved, epic rendition of the superhero tentpole. Though not everything quite worked. One of its most bizarre and complained about moments involves the perfunctory throwaway cameo appearances by fan-favorite superhero Martian Manhunter. He makes his first appearance following a genuinely affecting heart-to-heart between Martha Kent and Lois Lane, where it's revealed revealed that the superhero has been masquerading as Martha for the entirety of the conversation. This immediately undercut the emotion of the scene, though the reveal that Martian Manhunter is in fact General Swanwick was pretty neat, and his final interaction with Bruce Wayne had promise. Overall, the character felt like a total afterthought inclusion here, but hopefully Jon Jones finally gets a well-deserved spotlight in James Gunn's DCU. Fingers crossed, eh? And number 1, Paloma, No Time to Die. No Time to Die may have been far from perfect, but it was certainly a fitting, affecting send-off for the Daniel Craig era of Bond, even if the show was arguably stolen by another character altogether. When 007 heads to Cuba, he meets up with CIA agent Paloma, a seemingly wet around the ears new operative who quickly proves herself to be an extremely smart, resourceful, and kick-ass ally to Bond. The Armas' charming and hilarious performance, gleefully subverting more than a half-century of passive eye-candy female roles in Bond films, delivered one of the most crowd-pleasing and potential-rich supporting characters of the Craig era, or any Bond era really. It's a shame then that she swiftly exits the film once she's assisted Bond, getting barely 10 minutes of screen time in a 163-minute film. It's all the more gutting as, with this being the end of the Craig era, it's highly possible the next film will press a hard reset on the whole cast. Then again, it's not entirely out of the question that Paloma will effectively become the new Felix Leiter, perhaps even using the codename Felix as a tribute to her fallen ally, showing up periodically in the next few Bond films to help 007 out of a tricky scrape or two. Yeah, that's what I'd do if I was writing the new James Bond movies, which of course I'm not, yet. Given the hugely enthusiastic audience reaction to the character, it'd be a massive, massive shame if this was it for her. So bring back Paloma, I say.